Aparna Subramaniam is a brand developer, creative strategist, and communications consultant, empowering change makers to increase their impact through branding and creative storytelling. Previously, Aparna has led brand and communications at fashion retail houses and startups. She was partner at 200 Million Artisans, an ecosystem enabler championing the potential of handmade in India. At 200 Million, Aparna led projects that bridged data and knowledge gaps about the potential of India's artisan economy to be a game changer in driving equitable and sustainable economic and social prosperity. One such project was a scoping study for Centre for Sustainable Fashion London to map best practices of fashion MSMEs using elements of sustainability and the role of universities in supporting these MSMEs. Welcome, Aparna. Shruti Singh works at the intersectionality of design, education, gender, skill development, and public policy. She is the founder of Global Impact Games, a social initiative that develops games to raise awareness on issues of sustainability, civic participation, negotiation, and global citizenship. The country head of Fashion Revolution India, Shruti is a co-founder at Leap India, a not-for-profit organization helping young citizens engage in their communities and work on United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. She has worked as a consultant with the government and civil societies in the fields of education, skill development, and textiles. She holds a Master in Public Administration degree from the Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy, the National University of Singapore, and a Master's in Fashion Entrepreneurship from London College of Fashion. Hi, Shruti. Kriti Srivastav is an educator on a mission. Her purpose was discovered and distilled through her time at NIFT, India's premier institution in the field of design, management, and technology, where she realized two things: the urgent and immediate requirement for innovation in the classroom, and the need for youth to make their experiences more mainstream. These goals led her to take up an academic position at NIFT Kangra, where she leads the postgraduate program in fashion management, teaching students to question the fabric of society while fostering innovation and entrepreneurship, amongst other things. Powered by several cups of coffee, like all of us, she is also the editor-in-chief of Ismat, Nazrana-e-Aurat, a 2-volume anthology of poems, whilst advocating for transparency and accountability in fashion supply chains. Hi, Kriti. Welcome to the discussion.
Hi. Thank you for having me.
And sitting with Kriti here, we have Avni. Avni Pandya is a seasoned professional with a background in textile and fashion design. With a dynamic 17-year career in the corporate realm, Avni has enriched her expertise through roles at esteemed companies such as Reliance, Myntra, and Craftsvilla, specializing in design, buying, and sourcing. This rich tapestry of experiences has been instrumental in the fruition of a visionary project, Yoshita Crafts Studio. Located in the idyllic Kangra district of Himachal Pradesh, the studio stands as a beacon of women empowerment and the revival of traditional crafts operating seamlessly from a remote village. Hi, Avni. Welcome to the discussion.
Thank you for having me.
Bhavani Parekh is a social entrepreneur who is the driving force between Banko Janko and Design Life, a foundation dedicated to social welfare. As a textile artist and fashion designer, she integrates garment ornamentation and embroidery to address community challenges, empowering thousands of women through employment opportunities. In the realm of garment manufacturing, Bhavani conceptualized the idea of upcycling waste fabrics, leading to the establishment of Banko Janko, an upcycle fashion brand with a vision aligned with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Banko Janko has successfully diverted tons of fabric waste from landfills, saved billions of gallons of water, and curtailed carbon emissions, making a significant impact on social and environmental issues related to waste fabric and material. Welcome, Bhavani. So, moving on with the discussion, I want to start with one thread that is, I think, common to almost everybody over here, which is crafts, and how craft, from what I've studied, from what I believe, is very, very critical to the mitigation of the climate crisis, and them being inherently more eco-friendly and working with the local ecosystems, having evolved from the local ecosystems. Shruti, you have just authored a report on craft, on the importance of craft in the age of the climate crisis. So I'm going to start with you. Your thoughts on the role that craft can play in building a more sustainable future for the fashion industry.
Thanks, Prerna, and hi everyone. Very happy to be here. Starting off with why crafts can play a really big role in the slow fashion movement and slow lifestyle movement. Crafts, as we all know, are handmade. They have a lower carbon impact. They generally use resources which are set up within the nature. They know when to replenish. They know how much to extract rather than extracting compared to fast production cycles. So you can say in general, crafts are produced more responsibly as compared to fast fashion, have definitely a better impact and can be great supporters of livelihoods and creative economies across India. But having said that, not all crafts are actually sustainable today. As the progress of time and the consumerism has increased, the consumption has increased, crafts have also undergone change. So we have to go down again and do an LCA and see which crafts are produced responsibly and which are not. Just to give you like an example from top of my head, polyester as a thread is being used in a lot of traditional crafts, handloom villages now, because that is cheaper, that is readily available, and it's very difficult to get natural fibers as we used to before. And that is something that needs to switch back again. And we see that change happening because a lot of entrepreneurs and innovators now are using agricultural residue to create new fibers, solving the issue of waste, as well as driving the demand, a global demand for fibers which are produced more responsibly, have a lesser carbon footprint. Anything produced using craft techniques and agricultural residue or textile waste definitely has a better impact on the planet. It can help you save more than 50% of water use. It is, if you don't use chemicals, then it has less chemical use, as well as land use. So I think there are a lot of benefits to looking at craft at different stages. I'm not just talking about crafts as we see as products, but craft as a technique of weaving, craft as a technique of producing a fiber, a yarn, and fabric, and to embroideries and making handmade and integrating into the luxury and slow fashion market across the world.
Thank you, Shruti. I'm going to move this question to you, Avni, from what Shruti has said. And you have, through design intervention, you are trying to solve for a very, very pertinent question, which is making crafts more relevant to audiences today, to the modern consumer. Talk us a little bit about the work that you talk us through about through the work that you're doing, and take us through the importance of this vis-a-vis climate change.
Hi. So predominantly my work revolves around working with this indigenous tribe of Himachal, which is the Gaddi tribe. So if you see their way of living, they're already very sustainable. Like they produce stuff which is only needed for their own personal use, right? The most famous product that they produce, they've been making it for so many years now, is the pattu. Now the beauty of this particular fabric is that it is almost 90% water resistant. So it is used by the sheep rearers who actually take their sheep all the way to Lahore Spiti and Kinnaur, and it's really cold, right? So usually this is woven in kgs. So you say I need 3 kgs, 4 kgs. So what really happens here that you don't need to carry too many stuff. You can have 2 pattus and you can survive the harshest of cold, right? So the thing is that everything that they get is all naturally. You get the sheep wool, you mostly dye it either with, you clean it with aritha, which is a soap nut. So pretty much the process is extremely sustainable. However, this craft, especially when we talk about the weaving craft of Himachal, I think generally, even as a craft, if I just have to put this, it needs some level of intervention in terms of design and probably at some extent contemporization. That's what we are doing. What we are really trying to do here is we are still sticking to the authentic weaving technique, but we are introducing more contemporary designs, because generally what I have also observed is that we have a very limited audience here. Now, if we really need to take this to a wider audience, then we need to also have designs and products that relate to them, that they are able to buy. Yeah, you have the younger generation who have the capacity to really invest in crafts, but do we really have the right kind of products that they would like to invest in? Right. So what we are really trying to do here is we are not just sticking to making shawls and stoles, which is a staple as far as Himachal weaving craft is concerned. We are also, making products like, let's just say, laptop bags. We are making home decor items. We are making things that are also liked by a wider audience. Yeah. And we are also trying to contemporize the design to some extent so that, there is a variety, I would say. And we are literally not changing anything as far as the traditional sustainable techniques are concerned, but we are still trying to give more variety. Yeah, so I think that is something which we really need to do. And as far as sustainability is concerned, yes, definitely. I mean, we are also trying to stick to the natural yarn. We mostly source the wool from the local people or in and around Himachal, right? So there are ways of sticking to it. But at the same time, what I really feel is with sustainability, we also need to understand that craft needs some level of design intervention beyond a time, which is, I think, now the time we really need to do that if you want to take it to
The next
wider audience.
generation.
Yeah.
Yeah. True.
Thank you, Avni. Aparna, you I know, have very, very strong thoughts about the role that design plays in whether or not people are going to adopt, a certain product or a brand, and that it plays a make or break role, when it comes to building brand loyalty, especially in the age of social media and, the way celebrities operate and how they endorse what they do and what they don't. Tell us a little bit more, share some of your insights with us.
So thank you so much, Prerna. I actually agree with what Avni was saying in terms of how can you make it modern for the next generation, because the purchasing power, I think, is going to be with Gen Z and Gen Alpha now. And while they're looking for something which is modern and unique, which is also a personal style statement of themselves, they're also heavily influenced by what they see on TikTok, Snapchat, Instagram. And unless these craft brands are where the consumers are and speaking to them in the same language, adopting the storytelling techniques that other brands with much higher marketing spends do, it's going to be very difficult to suggest that shift, which goes from high fashion brands to something which is more craft led, because I'm not very sure how many 100% sustainable fashion brands are actually affordable to the large section of population, right? Right now, it still seems to operate in the realm of somebody who's really conscious and sort of has the disposable income and has the privilege to be conscious. But I don't think that it is accessible right now at this stage with the price points that there are to be accessible to the larger public. And now I don't think this is the sole remit of the brands themselves. I also think that governments have a huge role to play in terms of setting up the infrastructure which allows these brands to be sustainable. And India in that regard has fallen very, very behind, right? Because there are like these large promises made, but because it's such a fractured and complex ecosystem as a whole, unlike agriculture, the crafts ecosystem is just very fragmented at this stage, and the government needs to step in. There needs to be private-public partnerships which will allow brands that want to be sustainable to actually be sustainable. Because if you speak to a few, like Kasha, for example, if you speak to Karishma, she'll actually tell you that even if she wants to be, it's not possible for her to source everything that she needs to be fully sustainable from local places. So in order to be sustainable, she's actually then having to send things to get dyed far away from where she is, which again defeats the purpose of being sustainable, right? Or it's not possible to do it in small numbers because it pushes up her production costs, which then ends up being pushed on to the consumer. So I think design is one part of it. But I think the larger part is also just to facilitate an environment where brands have what they need to be sustainable, so that there's wider adoption amongst contemporary companies, which will then come across to consumers themselves. Because the storytelling part of it, it's not possible unless you can actually record yourself showing you how they're transparent. Because as I've shared with you before, a lot of these brands say that they're sustainable, but I have no idea if they can back up what they're saying. They'll say it in their website and they'll, do these beautifully shot products. But unless they can, if I were to go and ask them, how sometimes like gold jewelry brands will tell you that you can come to the store and they will tell you whether it's actually gold or not. And if it's not, money back guarantee. There is no equivalent of that if you're telling me that it's 100% linen or 100% cotton, and that is sustainably sourced cotton. I have no way of verifying that. And perhaps there needs to be something like that, because if I'm expected to pay 4x the cost for something that you've deemed organic, naturally sourced, environmentally sustainable, how do I know? There's no certificate that I'm getting with it. There's no sort of external government body that has signed off on it, which is the same thing for organic food. It's just you're getting the same food, you're slapping on a price tag, which is 3x or 4x, and I have no way of knowing it. It's just how good your marketing is. So I do think that there are a couple of factors at play here, which go into the ultimate customer deciding how all of it ties together cohesively to build a product that they think is a suitable alternative, that they're willing to pay maybe even just double how much they would pay at a more accessible Myntra, Agio, whatever is the new high street brand that's popped up, where it allows them to change their looks and their personality on a more regular basis.
Right. Thank you so much, Aparna. You mentioned Gen Z and Gen Alpha now being the ones, with all the purchasing power. And so I want to now take this question to someone who works with, who's in constant contact with Gen Z and Gen Alpha. Kriti, what do Gen Z and Gen Alpha think, and where do they, where do they stand when we talk about this conversation around crafts and sustainability and sustainable sourcing, sustainably sourced, materials that are then used to make, rather, garments that are made from sustainably sourced material? Where do they stand in all of this?
Absolutely. I mean, so Aparna, thank you so much for that. I think you hit quite a few nails on the head in the way that you said that. And when you did mention Gen Z and Gen Alpha, and like you did say, I mean, Prerna, because I do work with them on a day-to-day basis, the point is, I think that their hearts are all in the right place. They really want to see change. But being extremely digitally native generations, I think they're also expecting it to be parceled to them in a very convenient package. And unfortunately, they've never had to get their hands dirty. So this fact finding or the authenticity, finding is something that seems like it's a little alien for them to do. Right. So I think there's a huge opportunity there to be able to actually prove the authenticity of a garment. And if there was a certification or an extra governmental body that could do something like that and parceled it in a manner that was convenient for consumption, I'm pretty sure that we'd have that market quite comfortably. And of course, like Avni said earlier, making the craft cool and more relevant to their day-to-day living is absolutely necessary. And as people enthusiastic of the sector or passionate about that sector, and definitely seeing the impact that it could have in consumption patterns overall, I think it is down to us to make sure that we can kind of steer their choices. And my classrooms are basically brainwashing centers, because I'm always sitting there and telling them, hey, you know what, this is what H&M did, this is the story, this is what Zara did, this is the story. And from then you are seeing, okay, they are making these sustainability efforts now and they are trying to be better, but it took consumer movement to make that happen, right? And I think Amazon is another fun example, because it took the pandemic for them to realize that country of origin is an important metric to add to when they were selling or not selling. I'm not saying you should buy, but sometimes if you have to, then you could pay attention to deeper factors that I think should govern how you are buying, if you are buying. I also tell them not to buy, so I'm not really When I'm very like, no, you guys have enough. Please go back to your wardrobes. I'm sure you can be creative enough to make it, last a while longer, to use it in a different way. Why not stretch your imaginations instead of your budgets? Right. So that's usually how I approach the problem. But I think to sum it up, their hearts are in the right place. They definitely want to do more, and they understand climate crisis in a manner that I think very few generations before them have. And but yeah, they are also unfortunately a part of the digitally native environment, and they're used to a lot of convenience. So if we could make it even a little bit more convenient, I think we've got them.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Kriti. And Bhavani, finally, I come to you. Sorry, I've come to you last because you're right at the intersection of this topic and the next that I want to go into, which is upcycling and how crafts and a zero waste philosophy are are inherently linked to each other. Your brand upcycles things. You tap into certain traditional crafts to do that to create your products. So talk us through your processes and how your thoughts on how craft and upcycling kind of go hand in hand. Bhavni, you're on mute.
Yeah, it was really pleasure listening to all my panelist friends. And yeah, but I would like to input something about this. As you said, the government, we have faced a lots of challenges because people don't know about, and there is a taboo about the upcycling. It is a pre-consumer, post-consumer. People don't know, right? And there is a vast differences in pre and post-consumer. Still, people don't know. Upcycling, मतलब जूने कपड़े पड़े, उसको use करो, उसके upcycle करो, and it is done. So we said we are facing a big challenge because there is a lots of taboo in India, and it is very difficult to change the people's mindset. We reach out to the government, we send the mails, we had a meetings, and so many things is happening because there is a no GST compliance, is no any policies, nothing was there, and I would like to say they are working so hard on this, and in few months maybe they will come up with a very positive some policies, and so many things is happening. So that is good. This government is really taking textile industry ministries are taking really very good initiatives in this. And secondly, so for me the brand Banko Janko is not only about selling the garment and generating the income, but for me it is like creating the more awareness of, in this training the children in design thinking and all that things, because I am in a fashion industry for more than 34 years. So we used to during that time I used to do the white labeling and surface ornamentations and all that things. So in the companies also we used to use that scrap materials to make the tassels, embroideries and all that things. So that is like that is a part of the design process, and it is like automation. We at that time we don't know this is upcycling and all that things is needed and all that, right? But after that we in this last few years, because of the fast fashion, this became a need, and the Banko Janko is born, out of all this need and learnings and all that things. So in and of course we used to work like in the craft and all that things. We used to work with the many villages, many women's, they are into the patchwork and all that. So in patchwork also, what we used to do, we don't used to give the original fabrics to make the patch, but we give the scrap materials, whatever the side cuts, and then we do the patchwork from that. It comes out very well. At that time, as I told, upcycling and was not in a boom or anything. But yeah, so I want to say that there is a lots and lots opportunity for the craftisans to utilize this upcycling into their business thing also, like doing the mirror work and kantha is not the new, right? It is our heritage, basically we can say. They used to make the godris and all that things. So there is so many techniques, craft techniques, that crochets. So not only from the thread, but yeah, from the making the fabrics, rope and so many things, you can utilize that crochets, all techniques in the upcycling textiles. So in Banko Janko paintings, we can say the paintings, block paintings. So we also do Madhubani. I love the craft. So what we do, we make the necklace from the textile scraps and paintings, Madhubani painting spandal, and all that thing. So this is all fun and you learn. So there is so many things can be done. Yeah, and as Kirti, you said the Xenex and everyone, they want the unique thing. So how we started when we were selling it. Our biggest challenge, our two pieces were not similar because we are literally using the scrap. We are not using the lump, that is the leftover lumps or something, because leftover lumps and everything is in automation. It is utilized in the manufacturing, maybe in the kids garment or any other. So what we really utilizing the scraps, and we are not into that key we will use only the cotton or like that. We use all the scraps, because if we say we will not use the polyester, and what happens to polyester? Polyester is not going to decompose in the landfill, right? So it is needed to utilize it and extend the life cycle till that some innovation will come. So that's why we are utilizing all the scraps. There is no any special fabrics or anything, and we use the different techniques for making the products, patching, joining, crocheting, and different things to be added in that things, like this Banko Janko is trying to do, but let's see.
Now, that's
So
great work that you're doing, Bhavani. Thank you so much. Avni, in my conversation with you yesterday, we also had this discussion on how, in crafts, little scrap, nothing ever goes to waste, and how it is zero waste. So, will you talk us through some of the ways in which, crafts are zero waste and they use
Uh,
upcycling
If I
solutions?
talk with what we do at my studio, so we do weaving, we do knitting, and we do embroidery. Now, in all of these, we are left with a lot of yarns, during warping or during just inserting the threads while we make the extra weft technique of weaving, right? So, what in the extra weft technique that we do, while we put the design, I usually prefer to use the old leftover yarns. Yeah, because when we do embroidery, we're left off with little pieces, right? So in my studio, nothing goes to the bin. Like every piece of thread is being collected, every piece of so we also have a little tailoring unit, right? So we're left over with a lot of fabrics as well. So nothing goes to waste, everything is being picked up and it's sorted out in yarns are sorted, fabrics are sorted. What we do with the yarns is basically we try to use it in making the borders and designs and wherever it can fit. The fabrics are then being taken and cut into various shapes and converted into products like bed covers or table covers, cushion, depending on what really customized order hota hai, so we use it as per the client needs it. And otherwise what we do is if we do a lot of chindi weaving, which is also called the scrap weaving, that is very popular in Rajasthan. But it's a technique that a lot of people in India use it, especially who practice the weaving craft, right? Because it's the easiest thing to do. आपके घर में कपड़े old है, उसको लीजिए काट के उसके बना लीजिए. So this has been something that people have been practicing for such a long time. So as a designer, all I can do is probably add some more aesthetically placed fabrics together, inserting some yarns together, and creating a whole new different thing that does not look like it's just made out of scrap. So we try to see everything from a point of not just upscaling, but also making it aesthetically appealing for people to go and try it out. It's not just something that it's old, and we've actually given it a new life. And even with the knitting, what we tell our clients, like when you get bored of our hand knitted sweaters, just give them back and we'll open it up and we'll create new things out of it, because the yarn's not gonna go to waste. The yarn, nothing happens to the yarn. Anything, when you wear knitted, hand knitted clothes, what happens is it can get torn from some places, or the stitches sometimes fall apart, but it's all fixable. and you can actually fix it in such an aesthetic way that most of the times people won't even notice that something was wrong with the piece in the first place, right? So these are some of the small things that we are trying to adapt in our studio, and I think a lot of people must be doing the same thing. And there's something to add to what Aparna said, that a lot of brands are trying to be sustainable. It's not that they don't want to be sustainable, but it's just that they are also handicapped in a lot of other ways. And I totally agree with her. And I know personally so many people who have been telling me this, that we want to do this. Even for me, I'm sitting in a very remote location. Now, we also work with cotton yarns, but sourcing that cotton yarns takes me a whole lot of trouble, and I'm still not able to sell that product at a price which is as competitive as other people are able to do, because sitting here and sourcing that yarn is really costing me a lot, So she's absolutely right. So I think sustainability also has to be looked with a, while we are all trying to just point out at people, I think it's not always that people are not really, they have the heart in the right places, but it's also a challenge to, 100% implement it.
Definitely.
Very well said, Avni. Talking about pointing out things and whatever. I'm going to come. I've had this conversation with some of you while while prepping, and there was a very interesting thing that caught my eye over the last few days. Is when Sonam Kapoor wore this beautiful anarkali made out of a rang-cut sari. I believe it used two saris. And it went on to this entire thing about how she shouldn't have cut up those saris. And then the conversation went back to Priyanka Chopra's look at the NMACC, where she had worn a dress also made out of rang-cut. And, and it's just now gone into this thing where there are people who feel that them cutting up those saris and wearing it is, democratizing the fabric, because it is not something that it's not something everybody would wear as a sari. Whereas there is the other side that says that, these are vintage, these are precious, these are treasures. We should hang on to that. So I just want to hear who on this panel stands on that. We'll start with you, Shruti.
I think that was an interesting debate, because also I feel like there is no right answer to it, because as a person who owns a piece of garment, it should be my choice on how I want to use it. However, having said that, I think when something is an heirloom or something is being passed on from one generation to another, so it is possibly up to me to even think about if it's passed on to me, or if it's so hard to get that kind of a product, maybe 10 years, 20 years, 30 years from now. Do I want to share and celebrate that garment by sharing it with people, passing it on to my daughter, passing it on to someone else, sharing it within my family? Because the moment you cut it to a size, of course, you can't reshare it or a lot of people can't share the same garment and wear it. So there is merit to arguments both ways. If you ask for my personal take, I would actually keep it in its original form, also because I feel like something which is unstitched has the beauty of being shared more. That craft can be shared with multiple people, can be passed on from one generation to another. And even when you cut out something like that and you make it into a garment, it's also up to you to decide how would you love it in that. How often will you wear it? You have cut it out into a beautiful dress. If you're going to wear it, a lot of times, that's great. I think that is the best way to utilize it, and that's the best way to show your love and your celebration for that garment. But if it is something that's just done for one look, one event, maybe one or two times, and it's going to sit at the back of your wardrobe and not be of use to anyone else, from a sustainability point of view and not just from a craft point of view, I think that is something to be rethought of. But again, coming back to the point, it is an individual's choice. And we can have our opinions on it, but I don't think we can school people on what they should be doing with their own garments. We are in this debate. We are talking about how to utilize garments the best, how to use pre-consumer, post-consumer textiles. And I think a lot of things need to be reclaimed to be used, or reclaimed to be wear. And like upcycling, there are also other things, like simple things like mending. I can't tell you how hard it was for me to find people who can mend my clothes well, because earlier that art used to be like within our family ecosystem, but now we have lost that art of a simple repair. I've After a lot of difficulty, I found a great person who can do rafu. We are also experimenting with visible mending. So I think all of these things, which earlier came so naturally because the ethos of households was less is more, take only as much as you need, use things well. It was still expensive. Like if I look at my family structure, if we would buy one sweater in winters, that used to be expensive. It used to be a purchase that would hit the pockets of the family. So it's not like garments are expensive, sustainable garments are expensive today, but like at that time. So if you compare how we were spending that money, it's my choice if I want to spend that 1,000 rupees and buy 10 things, or if I want to spend that 1,000 rupees and buy one thing. And of course, I'm not saying that something that is expensive is definitely sustainable. But I know for sure that something which is really cheap is definitely costing the planet and costing the earth. So right now, I think we are living in that age of like excess, like more is more, and and I think more is less. Like you want more out of everything, and everything is curated to a look on social media and Instagram for Gen Z and Alpha. And I think we need to relook at the relationship we have with clothes, because I think once we start looking at that, I think perspective of our value system changes. I don't think I valued my Nani saris like maybe 20 years before. But now, being part of this ecosystem, but also as I'm aging, I'm looking back and I'm actually going through the wardrobes of like my Nani's siblings, and, like going and saying, do you have something, which I can like borrow and see, because they don't make them like that anymore. So that relationship changes. And then those are things that we treasure and hold closer to our heart. There was a hot and cold report which said buy only 5 garments in a year. Trust me, last year I actually bought only 5 garments. I had to think so much before buying those garments, but I love them. I'm wearing one of them right now, and I've worn them. If you see my Instagram, you will see me repeat like 5 garments. You'll be able to tell me which ones I bought. So I think it all comes back to also relooking at our relationship on how we are consuming things.
Lovely. Thank you, Shruti. Aparna, I kind of know your answer, but just for the sake of the discussion, would you or would you not cut up a vintage precious sari?
I mean, if it belongs to my family, then yes, because I don't see myself, I don't know if I would see myself wearing the sari. And I think that instead of it gathering dust just out of nostalgia value, if I can use it, if it was repurposed in a different way, I think I would do that, because the ultimate goal of something which is heirloom is that it is supposed to be loved by generations after you, not just to be displayed in a, NMACC or Victoria Albert Museum, because that serves a different purpose. And specifically to the question of Sonam Kapoor or Priyanka Chopra, I think had they not done that, I don't know that many people would have even understood what that fabric was or what that craft was. Perhaps there's mixed opinions, but I think because they did that and they reimagined what that craft could look like by the way they wore it, it opened up conversations which otherwise would not have happened, and it would have been restricted to the domain of, like a Shruti and a Kriti, only those people who have access to that ecosystem, right? But for someone like me, who does not have such easy access, I would not have known that it existed, or that it was possible to even take something like that and think about how you can present it in a way that would personally make sense to you, right? So I think that I agree with Shruti that it's a personal choice, and depending on the type of garment it is, like if it's been really well loved, for the lack of a better word, and this is the last time that you can do something and you're doing it would mean that you cannot give it another life, perhaps I wouldn't. But if it's something that I think I want to change into a pantsuit, but then my daughter can repurpose that into a bag, and someone else in a generation after that, can like make a belt out of it or something, which means that it has another 4 lives. And that's before climate change kills us all. I think that's enough lives. That's how I would look at it. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you, Aparna. Kriti, how about you? Would you cut up a sari, a vintage sari?
I I had an opinion and then I heard Shruti's and I was very convinced and then I heard Aparna's and I'm quite convinced that way. But long and short of it, I think I'm going to go back to my opinion, which is I'd like to use individual creativity and see if I could drape that garment different ways to give it different wears, because I think styling plays a huge role here. And I really do believe, like, I mean, so often, and again, we're Indians, we were all brought up in homes where we always had someone older than us, a cousin or our own sibling, right? And we were always passed down garments. It's very natural. I don't know anyone who hasn't lived through that experience, right? So I think we've always made the best out of these garments. We've seen whoever was wearing it before wear it a certain way. And then when it came to us, we did what we could with it, and we had our own pieces that kind of, mixed and matched and made a completely different look out of it. And I feel that craft is very much in that realm where we can very easily bring out our own individuality, express ourselves in ways. There are so many sari influencers that are basically influencers because they teach you different draping styles, different styles, right? I remember a conversation with Aparna where we were talking about styling a sari with a corset. And a really risque one. If we could do that, I think it would completely change the dimension of it, right? And the fact is that heirloom handicraft like that is so rare to find now. And the value of that you only get when it's in your hands, because you can see the intricacy of the work, the skill of the artisan. And maybe I feel a little too or maybe I'm a little too close to this kind of a product, and maybe I'm lacking subjectivity there or objectivity therefore. But I just knowing how many man hours would have gone into making something like that, would make me reluctant to, let's say, cut it up, right? But it's only out of respect for, let's say, the skill of somebody. I have no knowledge of who that creator may have been. I mean, at least after fashion revolutions, who made my clothes and stuff, I know that a lot of creators are, or a lot of designers are trying to include that angle in the way that they're packaging and selling their products, right? And I know that it makes that product a lot more special for the person who buys it. But just maybe because you know how much work it goes into weaving, and if you see the intricacy of that fabric in your hand, I think that for me personally, it would be about finding different ways to style it so that I'm still giving voice to my individuality through that garment, and hopefully allowing that to continue for however long it may be. But again, like I said, however long it may be, because I'm very sure that anybody else, I don't know, may just change their mind about it and decide to do something else with it. And I think that's wonderful. So personal choice, definitely. But I think styling is something that we should really look at. And I think a part of clothing is also about putting your best foot forward. And sometimes that is about being able to represent yourself in the way that you're dressing. Oh, thank you.
The point of however long it may be, I think something that I've struggled with, and I think we need to do is come to terms with, or rather letting go of something that once we've passed it on to someone. I mean, I have given something to someone, and then I felt really bad about something that they've done with that, and I think that's an emotion that letting go is very, very important. So once we've handed over something, we've handed it off.
There, right? I've done a couple of swapping exercises with my classes. Where we did with the slow fashion movement, we had a movie premiere on campus. And I actually told the students to create an experience around the movie premiere. So they created a sustainable food festival where nobody had any kind of disposable, plates or cups. They were like, every participant that came for that food festival was told to come with some sort of a utensil of their own so that we could reduce waste from the event in that sense. And one of the stalls that the students put up, much to my surprise, was actually a thrift store. Because we have hostels on campus. So the kids kind of like just went around to different rooms and said, "Hey, would you like to, kind of come up with something?" And it was such a wonderful exercise because this gave them very hands-on understanding of pricing, of displaying, of inventory management, and actually not charging a lot of money, of course, because it was like maybe the most expensive item was 250, 300 rupees, but that was like an embroidered sari. So,
Yeah.
so they were able
Yeah.
to really, and I think that that was a very wonderful experience because they created that environment of making a garment go a while longer and saying that it doesn't have to be new to my wardrobe.
Yeah.
And I think that's a very, very interesting thought. And I'm really glad that they thought of it. So maybe
No,
the
I think
brain.
that's lovely, really.
I want to add an example, just very short one. IICB has done like we did a clothes swap there, and what they did eventually was there were some clothes left out, and then the faculty and the students decided to have a library of clothes you can borrow and you can put it back, and so they have established a library of saris, which I think as an institution, it's such a nice thing to
Absolutely.
institutionalize something so beautiful because we all can share saris and we're talking about unstitched silhouette. So I think such kind of formats are really nice and good to see them happening in educational institutes which can impact a lot many people and
Yeah,
inspire them.
I think that's lovely. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, Shruti. Avni, what about you? Would you cut up something,
You know,
you know?
again, I agree with everybody. I want to say this like no, and I'll tell you why I say this. So last year I did this training with these Dari weavers in Haryana. Yeah, and I specifically worked on the revival of the Panja Dari, which is the bridal Daris. So here revival, by revival I mean that there are so many old designs which are just non-existent now. So my first 1 week was just traveling in and around these villages and literally going to people's houses and telling them, please open your pitaras and show us the kind of daris that you inherited in your wedding or your grandmother or your mother-in-law, whoever, right? Just give us those daris, right? And I was amazed, like these designs are literally gone. They you don't see them anywhere anymore, right? And this, and even the new age weavers, they don't do these designs anymore because they don't know how to do it. Yeah, so the how it works is there's a very senior person who guides the younger weavers, aise aise banao, but there's no set pattern to it, right? So it's like everyone weaves as per their capacity and understanding and capabilities. But that really, now that I come back to this question, the amount that it took me to actually go and find these designs, I would not want to cut it up. I want to keep it that way so that the next generation would have a little easy access to the amazing work that already has been done, because it's soon going to go away
Vanish.
if you don't really start preserving these. So I think from that point of view, I think I won't cut it.
But did you do something to preserve it?
Yeah, we
Only those.
actually, what I did was I took 10 to 12 designs and I converted them into graphs. So now what that helped people with is like, now since it's on paper and it is a more educated way of working. So now they can actually recreate those designs. Yeah. So they
Right.
don't have to have the actual daris with them. They can just,
Use
make
the
from the graphs that I've made for them. So at least somewhere we are able to revive those designs back to life. So I think that's the reason I would say I wouldn't cut it up.
Right. Thank you so much for that, Avni. Bhavni, how about you? What would you do?
So everyone is in the same path, but yeah, so we do the upcycling. So I love creating the different products from their designing. And so first of all we see the strength, quality and everything, and then accordingly we can make it, and second, see, I would like to show you one thing. So just now we are passing through so many marriages in our family. So we have the scrap pieces from the sari materials and all that things. So we have I made the jacket for myself, like that. So I love to create the different things from all this old saris. But you can see in my home also there is a all scrap wall frames and everything that is from the saris. And back of my things you can see that is a wallpaper, and that is also from the small wallpapers catalogs, small pieces. So I love all creating all the different things from the scraps or maybe from the saris. And we do lots of the sari wall frames for the many customers.
If I
Right.
may add, this takes so much patience to be able to put the little
Yes.
pieces together in the right colors. And I think one of the larger reasons why it's probably not being continued is because we're all severely going down the patience meter.
That's very
You know,
Yes. No,
we're just
I
Technology.
everything
Technology.
quickly.
agree.
That
No, absolutely. That's true actually because it just needs time and patience and I mean so well, where do I stand? I have cut up some weaves I've inherited, and there are some that I wouldn't dream of cutting up. So I think for me it's got a lot to do with what that piece is. I did take my grandmother's sari and cut it up to upholster my sofas. And well, now part of it is ripping apart, and I'm just looking at it. I'm like, maybe I should do some patchwork. And like you mentioned, we need time, so I'm now just procrastinating on that. Meanwhile, that rip is becoming bigger and bigger. But yeah, that is something that needs time and patience. But something one restoration project I recently undertook, which was for my grandmother's wedding sari, which had pure zari work all over, but it was on a French chiffon, and the chiffon had withered away. So we needed to transplant it onto something new. And I did toy with the idea of making something else with it. And then this lady who was helping me out, she said, if it's your grandmother's sari, I can make something else for you if you'd like. But the moment I make it to your size, you cannot share it with anyone unless they just happen to be your size, which is the point that Shruti also made. And she says, then it comes down to trend and taste and whatever is in then or not in at that point in time. So do you really want to do that? So so eventually because it was a wedding sari, it was fairly heavy. So I decided to divide the embroidery between the sari and a shawl that I could wear with it. But yeah, her advice to me would be to keep it unstitched. So she said, you go for a shawl, you go for a sari, do whatever, but don't limit it to a size. And I think there was a lot of merit. I felt there was a lot of merit, in what she was saying.
even damaged saris, I think you should definitely do something with it so that you can extend its life. For sure.
Yes, absolutely. But I think what we're very fortunate to be living in is also times when people have devised ways to strengthen fabric that has weakened. So I did that with my mom's sari. I had them put a backing on that same fabric so that it was stronger and I could continue wearing it. But I think a lot of this actually this brings us to the last point that I wanted to talk about, which is education. And education comes in many different forms, which is something that all of you have been instrumental in. Well, me too in a way. I will come back to that later. But I want to start this time with Bhavini. Bhavini, you've been conducting workshops with students in schools and colleges to educate them on the importance of sustainability and introducing them to upcycling. Can you tell us a little about that and how that came about?
So, we do the lots of workshop for upcycling the textile. So in that, what exactly we do, we give them the scrap to the children, and from ideation to pitching the product. During that time, it is really the experiential learning, and they love it. So consecutively, we are doing for the KJ Somaya Design School and their students really love it. So we give them the topic, like the what they basically in the initial stage we learn what they actually want to make, like bags, accessories, and all the things, and then we are giving the literally the scraps, and we help them how to do the ideations, how to make the mood board, how to develop the product, because to develop the product from the scrap is not very easy, because whatever they have thought and it is not there, right? If they have thought of the red color or some red parity, but red color and red parity is not there, what to do? So like that, from there to the ideating about the brand and presenting, pitching with the pricing, and the pricing is also very challenging in that case. Okay, what will be the pricing, so from that, and it is really they love it and it is a fun. So depending on their, sometimes to mix match the fabric strength, fabric thickness, fabric colors, there is so many things it happening, and they in these things they learn from the scratch until that they make the product. So this is very interesting for them. And our mission, mainly our mission, this is only the one step, right? So when they will learn, they will create more interest about that, and then they can implement in their future any design, not only in a fashion or a garment, but maybe in any other product wherever they can, so this will become in automation like that things. So it is fun, and also we are also learning from that, so it is really the fun.
No, I'm sure it is. Thank you, Bhavini. Avni and Aparna, you've both worked with with artisans, and with at both 200 million and Yoshita, there's a lot of design intervention that is going on, educating artisans to create more modern designs, and how to market their stuff better. I'll start with you, Aparna. I'll first talk about the. Actually, no, sorry. I'll come back to Avni. Let's talk about the design part of it, and then I'll come to Aparna, and we'll talk about the marketing part of it, and when it comes to educating the artisans towards to bringing them.
So, I'll again go back to the training that I did with the Dari weavers, right? So, what they do is like mostly the new age artisans, you give them a picture and they'll convert that design. But now, for example, in mostly these Daris, they use a lot of animal motifs, right? So, they have peacock and they have deer and all these things. Now, but the thing is, like, if one Dari has 6 deers, all the deers look different. Yeah. Why? Because when you do the whole extra weft technique, weaving technique, it requires you need to know how many yarns to pick and how many yarns to drop to actually make the particular design, right? So now this is where I introduce them to a more systematic way of working, which is the graph. Right. So once you have the design on the graph, now you can actually interpret what the line means to you according to the yarn that you're using. Right. So once you get that understanding clear, just looking at the graph, all your deers will look similar, right? So while there is another aspect of beauty that everything looks different and it looks more, let's just say, more natural, there's nothing wrong with that. But then there's also a certain systematic way of doing things, right? Because visually it might not look that nice, but the moment you have it a more systematic approach to it, it just all starts sitting in place. So when I introduced this whole graph to the artisans, that's when they were like, oh, aise bhi ho sakta hai. My dear, all my deers can look the same, and they actually look prettier. So I think these small changes, when I introduced this to them for the first time, they were quite reluctant, because anything new to them, if you introduce, it's not always immediately well accepted. You got to prove it to them that what we are trying to tell you is actually going to make your life better and more simpler, right? So I think this was one of the ways that we were able to implement it, and they're really happy. Now again, this thing needs a lot of at least you need to have basic understanding of drawing, right? So while some artisans are not very good at it, इसमें क्लस्टर में से अगर 5-6 लोग भी इसको सीख जाते हैं, and if they are able to help the others, then I think we have still more or less solve the problem here. Yeah, so I think this was one thing that I learned, that we need to have some more systematic approach towards this. Like even in the technique of shawls that we do here, you see a very set kind of design. If you see Kullu shawls, they're very set. But we also make elephants and horses and fishes and everything. So when we do workshops with the students, we tell them like, कि ये भी हो सकता है. So it's not the technique might have certain restriction. Like for example, we cannot do very circular motifs. Everything that we do will come in a geometric form. Yeah. So even when you make an elephant, the elephant is not going to be rounded edges. It will have certain squares and triangles and rectangles to it, but it will still look like an elephant, and it still gives a new look to it, right? So I think there is so much you can do with these crafts. Just a little bit of I would say design intervention, design thinking can actually solve a lot of these problems.
It's very counterintuitive, no? Because you'd imagine that similar looking deer is what you would want on a garment because we're so used to it.
Yeah, I was going to say that while the beauty of natural handmade crafts is that everything will be dissimilar and there will be unique.
That I totally agree. But what I'm trying to get here is that if you teach them this, you can then use it to whatever way you want.
Yeah.
Then it becomes a deliberate choice of making the deers differently. There's nothing wrong in that. But at least you know how, if at all I want to make it something symmetrical, I have a client who says, no, I want all the deers symmetrical. Then you at least know how to do that.
How to do it. Yeah. It's also something that unfortunately I think with crafts having declined in popularity, this understanding that anything that is handmade will have these little flaws, for want of a better word, imperfections, is something that is very difficult to actually explain to people because they'll come and say, "Nee, oh, that is damaged because these two things are not alike or their size is different," and then to explain to them, which brings me to the marketing side of things, Aparna. You worked with artisans and the work that they do, and 200 million artisans has actually been very, very instrumental in pushing the work out of the craftsman work out there. Tell us a little bit about what is still wanting and how how the artisans can be empowered to actually take their work forward.
Thanks, Prerna. I actually think in order for artisans to be empowered, you need to send the artisans itself to design schools, because the artisans that we've spoken to who've also had access to design, because they already have the inherent knowledge of how the craft itself works, their minds are opened up to the possibilities. There are so many artisans that we spoke to who work with Judy Frater, who actually related almost as a transformational experience, because they're just like, we were taught how to think, which in today's, ideology would probably classify as design thinking, which it actually is. But that's what it did for them, which is very different from, no offense meant to students who are coming out of design schools who are then going and working with artisans themselves. But then the power is still vesting with a few who are then working with artisans to execute, but not really empowering artisans as designers themselves, which really happens in other parts of the world, that you're able to empower the artisans to leverage, generational wisdom, but then turn it into opportunities for economic prosperity, which is currently not happening to them. They're artisans, they have been artisans, they continue to stay artisans, and their kids are dropping out and doing something else because they're no longer seeing economic opportunity there, one. And two, they feel that it is too physically demanding when they have other alternatives which perhaps are not as physically demanding but yield much richer economic dividends. And this is something an artisan actually told us. He's just like, our kids want to take jobs where they sit behind a desk because they want to spend so much time on their phones. So it's very difficult to get them involved in doing very demanding physical labor that goes into craft, right? So they are also aware that their kids are perhaps not looking at wanting to continue it for a variety of reasons. But say Vimor works with a lot of artisans in South India, and she has been, I think, an anomaly, or that's how she says that people tell her that she is, because she has very successfully ensured that the artisans that she works with are economically so well off that their kids have gone to engineering business schools, have come back to it, but not as artisans, as business people. So much so that she's like, my artisans can afford to buy me out, and she's like, that's what we should be doing. That is true empowerment, that you're creating pathways for them to imagine a better future for themselves, where they're not choosing, where they're not like doing craft, but they have no alternative and they haven't learned a skill. It's because they're choosing to do it and they have a different vision for it, which is then aided by their own community and their family. It's not that they're working for someone else. So I think the education part, sure, like you can teach children in school how to appreciate craft. You can teach them the importance of, the benefits of choosing something which is not on demand, but we live in an on demand. Amazon has very successfully made us all with like 1 day delivery, same day delivery. It's very difficult for people who've been born in that time to, I think, understand that it takes up to a week because you're creating something by hand. And sure, some education might go some way to change that, but I think the better way to do it is to actually help the artisans become designers themselves. So they have complete control, not just of their craft, but how they choose to market it and sell it themselves. And then the dividends that come are truly theirs and not going to a middleman, not going to a designer who's not being transparent about how much money is actually going to the artisans who are creating the products that we wear. If I'm paying 2,50,000 rupees for a lehenga, how much of that is actually going to go to the artisan? Why is an artisan continuing to work in such inhuman conditions, generation after generation, if every designer is claiming that they're creating safe working conditions, are paying fair wages, but there is no way that we can actually check that? Again, going back to the fact that there is no body, government, though I don't trust, an extra governmental body which is actually doing this, right? Like Nest does that, where Nest actually has partners in India. And in order to be a partner of Nest, you have to fulfill certain conditions that they have laid. And across the world, it's the same. They don't make exceptions because you're in India, right? Like you have to make sure that people who are working for you have access to 3 square meals. They're not working more than 8 hours a day. They can't be working in conditions that are unhealthy or unsavory. So there has to be electricity. It has to be warm. There can't be rats, and like you've cubby-hid 20 of them in a place that can only accommodate 5. Why are there no Indian institutions doing that? Why do we have such little regard for our own people? Why is it that somebody outside the country needs to come and teach us? Which goes down even just to the education. The people who are making money off of Indian crafts, Indian designs, are people outside India. It's the same story with yoga. We don't know how to market it ourselves because we don't have value for what we build. Once we have value for our own things, then it's possible for us to market it. If we're constantly shortchanging ourselves, that like filters down to the lowest denominator, which unfortunately at this point is the artisan, which didn't used to be the case in Gandhi's time, right? He was venerated as the highest person contributing because it was a kala, it was a skill that not everyone had. But today they're the lowest rung, where they're executing, but they're not involved in decisions about what to create, how to do it, and nobody's willing to teach them. That's the challenge with them being unwilling to learn also, because we've not created a culture of curiosity, innovation in them to feel excited about, I want to learn a new technique, I want to learn a new pattern, because they're first thinking about, it's a lot of like work for me. How do I know if I learn this, it's going to translate into more money for me? That's why artisans are reluctant to do it. And they're reluctant to do it with Indian brands. They're not reluctant to do it with brands that are coming from abroad. They're happy to do it for brands who are coming from abroad.
For this very, very heavy, important insights, Aparna. I think you mentioned creating a culture of curiosity. I would also add to that. What we need to do is create a culture of appreciation for these crafts, which I think is also missing. But talking about that, I want to come to Shruti, who works. Fashion Revolution has been working with advocacy and education, and how we can create that culture of appreciation. Shruti, your thoughts, please.
I think there's something to learn everywhere. So I will just keep my answer short and say be curious. If it's just flipping the back of your label and seeing what are the components and being curious about, oh, this is viscose. Where does it come from? And who made it? And can I get more information about it? And that's what Fashion Revolution does. It enables you or encourages you to ask good questions that lead you to answers that can help you make an informed choice. Because when you tell someone, do this, do that, they might probably not listen to you. But when you show pathways of curiosity, asking questions, having the power to ask, because sometimes we think, what can an individual person do? But the question, who made my clothes, actually resulted in millions of people asking their favorite brands, who made my clothes? And brands actually recognizing that collective power, that collective conscience, and that collective curiosity, and answering that, okay, these are the people who made the clothes, or what is in my clothes. And these are simple examples. I think you can write emails to your brands, you can write, ask questions. So I feel like, be curious, ask good questions, and lead with that information, because that information is the power to create that difference.
Did you lose Prerna?
I think Prerna got disconnected. I'm also that we have run out of time.
Manaparna, that was awesome.
Thanks, Kriti.
My
Maybe
God.
it's scared of Prerna.
No, I'm pretty sure it didn't.
Perhaps, Kriti, as an educator yourself, maybe you can talk about some insights of what it takes to build a culture of curiosity for the next generation.
Uh, Short answer is I'm wondering too. But no, I'm just my students in just that. Uh, I think it does come down to really pushing them out of their comfort zones. They come, I think, when we were in classrooms, and I don't know, I hate to make this an us and them thing, but I think when we were in classrooms, we had to struggle so much to find information. It had to be about going to different books, different sources, different authors, different people. We had to go out of our way to try and put ourselves in the line of, information. And maybe that's why there was always a little bit more hunger, a little bit more, I don't know. I think we just tried harder to get accurate information. I think in their case, it's just so easily available, and misinformation also equally is so easily available. And more often than not, misinformation is better marketed. So, it's in your WhatsApp forwards, it's just basically everywhere, and the people that you think you trust are also talking about it in that way, and no one's asking whether what is being shared is correct or not. And I think also culturally, as a country, we have a very high power differential index when it comes to generations and things like this. So we don't really question people older than us very comfortably. It causes a little bit of a personal rift when we do. So, so to create a culture of curiosity, at least for my classrooms, I usually tell them that, they need to ask questions. And if they are talking, they should talk to me at the risk of sounding quite needy. You know, and I do sort of, so I'm teaching communication of late. And you won't believe it, I've actually pushed them to read Enid Blyton books that we probably read when we were 6 and 7 years old, but most of them have not. They haven't read that. And I'm like, how do you not know what a beautiful January day in Himachal is so similar to an English day in April? And you should have an egg salad sandwich with this. I don't know why you're not getting it. So I think it does come down to sharing accessible ideas, but forcing them to experience it, and maybe instigating a little bit of learning and research along the way. And if we're able to kind of intersection these ideas, then I think we're able to make them a little curious. And more than that, I think we're able to get them curious in the classroom, which I think is half the battle. And then maybe in a period of time, then if they've been experiencing that for a while, then I think they then sort of it becomes a way of thinking for them to critically ask, just constantly ask, and I mean, I think we're all trying our best when it comes to that. But stuff, yeah, it's a big one. I always thought curiosity was inherent, you know. I mean, when we were growing up, we had these sayings, no, curiosity killed the cat.
But it's also patience, like you said, the
Yeah.
patience to be able to receive that answer, the patience to answer someone else's question today. And when you get answers like, a click of a button, 1 second, microseconds. So I think that patience to learn, the patience to read an entire paragraph and not just skim through like the,
Yeah.
things that stand out. I think that has also shifted. So yeah, that those are some of the things that are valued, and I hope someday sustainability is not like an extra curriculum in an education institute, but it actually runs through all the courses and says, "This is it. You have the
Right.
power to make the change," and we will not do this as usual. So having, I think, if everyone's okay, I'm not sure if Prerna is able to join back, but if everyone's okay, and then we can perhaps close the session, Aparna.
Aparna, I think she's talking to you, not to
Yeah,
me.
I'm talking to Aparna from Rise.
Okay.
It's a
No, I was just telling my Avni, like from Idogro, we have Avni and Aparna here again. Yeah. So having said that, anybody wants to give it a small close note? Just wanted to come and interrupt and say that, we just passed a little bit of time. So just wanted to let you guys know, like if anybody wants to close, and then we can go off live from here.
Shruti just did.
Yeah. Yeah. So thank you everyone for joining us here. It was such an amazing session. I was just hearing everything from the backstage. A lot of inspiring stories, and I probably like we'll all get in touch, and I'm sure like we will do something together as well. Sure.
Thank you so much, Aparna.
Thanks, everyone.
It was
Rise,
lovely,
and
everyone.
panelists. Really good conversation.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.